I want to talk about equilibrium. And I wrote a couple notes today. It's still going to be kind of off the top of my head, but I wanted to write a couple notes down because there's always one or two things you forget after the video, you know. But it's kind of a good thing, you know. That means it wasn't scripted, because sometimes we set these goals and plans in life and everything's got to be structured, and then it actually limits our potential. You know, there's the duality of it again, because now you're just, you know, your plans are limited to that, and then you're actually, I said, limiting yourself, living into the future again, dreaming again in that dream state. Equilibrium's interesting because there's actually 3 states of equilibrium, and just because something has equilibrium doesn't mean that it's stable. So there's a neutral form of equilibrium, there's a stable form of equilibrium, and then there's an unstable form. There's 3 forms of equilibrium. And also, I got these 3 definitions of it as well that describe it. State of physical balance, opposing forces that are balanced, and then a calm state of mind. It's also a definition of equilibrium. That's, you know, it's a state of mind to where you're not constantly being pulled in one direction. You know, to live up to these standards, or to go against somebody, like the what's that disorder, where the rebellious disorder, where you always want to say the opposite of something, and they want to like fight authorities all the time. You have equilibrium. You're neutral. You know, you're more focused on. It doesn't mean you're totally unemotional, like some kind of android. It just means that you're logical in the sense of, like, you're actually using reason and your own form of common sense, based on wisdom and intuition, rather than trying to match it up with that black and white checkerboard matrix initiation board again. Good and evil, you know, would mommy and daddy approve of everything, every decision based off of fear. Instead, you know, using your own equilibrium, your own consciousness. So basically, you know, I talk about these initiations all the time, you know, and different forms of it, of Freemasonry in our society. You know, religious, scientific, cultural. You know, the thing is, one of the things that they specialize in is limiting your brain and limiting its potential. And that's what school's about. School backwards is lock, and it's a filtering system to limit your potential, and to target anybody who's begins to figure things out, pretty much, you know. So it's a big filtering system to restrain you, restrict you, hold you back, not to produce this well-informed, independent person who can do everything for themselves and doesn't need the government and doesn't need to be mind controlled. You know, the whole point of the government was to mind control somebody. Otherwise, they wouldn't have needed it. They had to create somebody who was dependent. They had to create enough people who thought that they needed to be controlled. And that's where government came in. It's not the other way around. You know, so we're not giving our children a chance at, you know, equilibrium. You know, we're sending them to school vaccinated. They're getting sick all the time. And we're like, oh, why is he got strep again? Or, you know, we go there, it's always strep or whatever else they tell us it is. And, you know, always got the scratchy throat, runny nose. And then they tell you, oh, it's allergies. We're going to run the allergy test, you know, the pediatrician or podiatrist, or whatever they call the children's doctor. And, you know, and it's just the same old story. You know, and then who knows how intelligent, how smart they would have been if it wasn't for the brain damage from the vaccines. the lowering of the IQ. So to make a long story short, I mean, we're not giving our children a chance. We're shooting them up with poison. And then they're getting all their influences from school teachers, their peers, their other classmates, their friends they hang out with after school. And we're too busy working and pleasing the man and bowing down to the man to focus on our children. When we do, it's like, oh, let's go out this weekend, do something fun. You know, let's watch the football game. Let's go brush up. Let's practice your sports. Play a video game, and then that's it. And then it's back to school. Be a good boy. Be a good little girl. Listen to your teachers, and that's it. And we're not preparing them for life, for reality. You know, I get it. You know, it's a tough world out there, and you want to guard them and protect them, and have them watch Disney movies and be real nice and all this, and then you don't want to show them too much and give them too much adult stuff when they're young. And I get it, but there's got to be equilibrium. You got to prepare a child for the reality of the world, because it's cruel that they're already up against all these odds against them, and then their own parents are misleading them as well. So it's all about equilibrium. So I wanted to start there with the children. So these half-brained initiations, back to these, they're shutting off one side of your brain, and that's what school's about. That's what the Bible's about. That's what, the left-hand path and the Eastern path, and even like Buddhism and Zen Buddhism, and all of it is controlled. So that's what that's about, to get you stuck into that loop of, half-brain, pea-brain thinking. As much as you want to be enlightened and save the world, or you're going to be a little hermit all off to yourself, spiritually enlightened, and you've conquered the world, or whatever it might be. You're stuck in that half-brain, pea-brain thinking. So it's about expanding the mind, spiritually growing. Otherwise, you're just pretending. There's nothing wrong with faking it till you make it, but eventually you got to get off that roller coaster ride of just constantly ramming your fucking head into a brick wall, So there's all this talk about high frequency. We need high frequency. The frequency's changing. We're going into a 4D, 5D. Now what is it? 6D reality? It's only 3D. Nothing's ever going to change that. 3D is all there is, you guys. It sounds fancy, it makes them feel good, like they're the truly enlightened ones, but this is all there is. Look around. This is the reality. You're seeing what we can see. This is how much we can see. Other forms of life can see other degrees of visible light. This is matter. This is what it looks like. This is what reality is. And there's different ways to explain that and make it sound really cool, scientific or philosophical, but this is what it is. And it's beautiful, it's magical, it's supernatural universe. Constantly reacting with us, constantly cause and effect that never ends. Whether we try to ignore it or not, the universe is always interacting with us. And in that sense, it's true love, because it's constant. It's all around us. Now, it could be shut off, they can lock you in, you can restrict that energy wave, that consciousness. You can be locked up in a box, a concrete box, or locked away, and they can disconnect you from things. But as far as that force, that universal force, the universal laws of nature, that's the constant. That's the creator, the source that connects us all. So we got to do better with, the children, and letting go of these fairy tales. And esoteric is a real thing, There's esoteric, which is the deeper meaning of things, the real meaning of things, like, let's say, connected with what they keep calling the latter days, the end times, and all that. But to get caught up into these different interpretations and taking it too far, you just defeated the purpose, again. So there's nothing wrong with researching this subject, the occult, the black sun, or whatever you want to look at. Anything. There's no taboo, like, this is not, you can't look at, right? That defeats the purpose of free speech and everything. So just it's a matter of what you do with that there. Then you get obsessed with it and fantasize with that information and let it work against you. Everything's about that equilibrium again, and how you're processing the information and how you're interacting with the universe on a personal level. Everything starts with you. So with all this high frequency talk about how everything needs to be turned up, I would say we need to lower our frequency and calm the fuck down and relax and take a look around. Otherwise we'll miss what's going on. So while everybody's telling you that you need to turn up your frequency, you might want to stop and who's the person in prison that knows what's going on? The person that's in the middle of the room or in the corner of the room just observing everything. The calm, laid back person that's just observing information. So lower the frequency enough to catch your breath in life, to understand your surroundings, to be able to cross the street, know what's the front, the back, the right, and the left. Here's another thing with that. The heart frequency that connects with your heart is like a 0.05 or something. It's such a still little slight murmur that reacts with your heart. It does a reset, like a reset of that, your natural heart pattern. So it's a low frequency. You got to get back to that. You got to get off the roller coaster ride. You got to get off. It's a wave. There is a wave in society. We're coming to a point in society. You know the sine wave you see, like the serpent? Well, we're in that middle part, or like the middle of the X or the cross. So now it's like, which way you go? You're going to stay on the roller coaster, like, whoa, whoa. But eventually you have to stop. Once the right hand wax on and wax off, you know, Kung Fu or Karate Kid. But eventually you have to get off. So it's like a merry-go-round. So and then you get off and you're like, ooh, that was a lot for me there. Then they want you to jump back on, you know, but you might be going in the other direction, but now you're back on the fucking merry-go-round. But the way inertia works and momentum, eventually if you're going in one direction, you have to stop because you figured out you were wrong, right? Or there's something you had to change. Or if everybody's going in this direction like a mudslide, like society's going in this direction, eventually you're going to have to stop and go back this way. Whether they're telling you that the Mayan solar flare, 26,000 solar flares coming, or whether the Skull and Bones master are doing it behind the scenes. It's a matter of what you're doing about it and how you're reacting to the stuff. So it's like that sine wave roller coaster ride. You know, we're at a peak of something in society. This is the end of a cycle. Are we at the top technologically? No. Technology is being suppressed. All right. Look what they created around the World War II era. Stuff that's like still competing with stuff we have today. They didn't have internet. They didn't have all this so-called technological advancements of computers that we have today, but look what they created back then. You know, as I've said before, too much light creates a darkness. Just closing your eyes and using your own brain. See, that's something AI can't do, you know? It's monkey see, monkey do, unless you start to use your own. But yeah, we've reached a peak. Not a technological peak, because that's being suppressed. But we're at a point in society, that crossroads I was talking about, that sign. Now, do you follow society? And they tell you, oh, you adapted very well. You're gonna survive well. You're gonna grow with the next generation. You're gonna be an asset to it, you know. Or you try to rebel and go live in the woods and just away from your family and just out there in the woods. Or do you just keep that equilibrium, keep the possibility alive, keep yourself adaptable, the true meaning of it, you know? And because we love ourselves and other people, but They may not be ready. They may not be awake, and we may have a lot of growth left, you know, which I think most of us still have a lot of growth to go. So I'll leave it there for now. You know, it's all about the equilibrium, not getting spun off to the vortex, to the right or left, the torus field, you know, the sin cycle. Thanks for watching, guys.